Zainab was the kind of daughter every parent dreamed of. Living in Kumasi, she worked as a nurse in one of the busiest hospitals in the city. Her days often stretched into nights, with double shifts that left her body aching and her eyes heavy, but she never complained. For her, the long hours were worth it because every paycheck meant she could send money home to her parents. She believed their comfort and peace were more important than her own. Her small apartment was modest, almost bare, because she rarely spent money on herself. While others her age saved for vacations, new clothes, or the latest phone, Zainab thought only of her parents. If her father mentioned needing repairs for the house, she found a way. If her mother sighed about the rising cost of groceries, Zainab quietly sent extra. Every sacrifice was tied to the deep respect she carried for them, a respect that had been planted in her since childhood. Her friends often teased her about how much she gave up, telling her she deserved more for herself. Zainab would just smile and shrug. "They raised me," she'd say softly. "The least I can do is take care of them." For her, it wasn't just about duty. It was about love that expressed itself in sleepless nights, skipped meals, and paychecks that vanished into her parents' bank account before she could think of her own needs. Zainab's life was built on sacrifice, and she wore it like a badge of honor. It was late in the evening when Zainab's phone rang. She almost didn't pick up because she had just finished a long shift and wanted nothing more than to lie down. But the moment she saw her mother's name flash on the screen, her heart skipped. Her mother never called at that hour unless something was wrong. "Zainab," her mother's voice trembled through the line. "Your father, he is very sick. Gravely ill. We don't know what to do. The doctors say he needs urgent care." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. Zainab sat straight up, her exhaustion vanishing in an instant. "What do you mean gravely ill? What happened? Tell me everything," she begged, her voice already shaking. Her mother's tone carried panic and fear. She spoke quickly, saying there was no time to waste, and that they needed money immediately to start treatment. "If we delay, it might be too late," her mother whispered, her voice breaking. Zainab's hands grew cold. The image of her father, the man who had always been strong, walking with confidence and telling stories about his youth, now lying helpless, was too much for her to bear. Her throat tightened and tears welled up in her eyes. "Don't worry, Mama. I will send the money. Promise. Please just make sure he is safe. Don't let him suffer." Her mother thanked her, relief flooding her words, but the urgency never left. She reminded Zainab again that time was running out. The moment the call ended, Zainab sat in silence for a few seconds, staring at the wall of her tiny apartment. She felt her chest pounding as though her own heart was trying to keep time with her father's weakening one. Then she wiped her face and stood up. There was no room for hesitation. She opened her small notebook where she kept track of her bills, her rent, and the money she usually sent home. The numbers already worried her, but in that moment they meant nothing. What mattered was saving her father's life. She whispered to herself, "I can't lose him. Not like this." Even though she was already drowning in her own expenses, Zainab didn't think twice. She called the money transfer service and promised herself she would figure out her own problems later. Right now, her father's life was her only priority. That night, Zainab lay awake on her bed, replaying her mother's trembling voice over and over in her mind. She imagined her father lying weak in a hospital bed, waiting for the help she had promised. And though her eyes were heavy, her mind would not rest. She had made her decision. Whatever it took, she would be there for him. Her sacrifice would not be in vain, at least that's what she believed. The next morning, Zainab did what many people would have thought impossible. She walked into the bank with shaky hands and a heavy heart, ready to send $4,000 to her parents. It was more than she could afford, far more than she had ever sent at once, but her father's life was worth everything she owned. As she signed the forms, she didn't even let herself pause to calculate what that money meant for her. All she could picture was her father getting the treatment he needed, sitting up again, smiling at her the way he always did when she came home. When the transfer was done, a strange mix of relief and fear washed over her. Relief that she had acted quickly, fear of what came next for her own survival. Rent was due in 2 weeks, electricity bills were already waiting, and she had only a fraction of her salary left. Still, she told herself, "I'll manage. I always do." Managing, however, meant sacrifice. Zainab began skipping meals, convincing herself that tea and bread was enough to get through the day. At work, when her colleagues invited her to join them for lunch, she would politely decline, pretending she wasn't hungry. Her body felt weaker, but she kept pushing, telling herself that hunger was nothing compared to losing her father. She also stopped spending on herself completely. The new shoes she had been saving for? Forgotten. The small outing she had planned with a close friend? Cancelled. Every little coin mattered now, and she guarded what little she had left like it was gold. Yet even with all the cutting back, her money still didn't stretch far enough. Eventually, Zainab swallowed her pride and asked a trusted colleague for a small loan. It wasn't easy for her to do. She had always wanted to stand on her own feet, but desperation left her no choice. Her colleague agreed, noticing how tired she looked, but Zainab only smiled and brushed it off, saying, "I'll pay you back as soon as I can." Day after day, she dragged herself through double shifts, her stomach empty, her eyes heavy, but her heart steady with one thought. Her sacrifice was saving her father's life. At night, when the hunger pangs were sharpest, she would close her eyes and imagine her father recovering, her mother relieved, their voices filled with gratitude. That hope kept her going. $4,000 was a mountain for her, but she had given it without hesitation. Zainab believed she had done what any loving daughter should do, even if it meant suffering in silence. She told herself she could endure the pain of sacrifice as long as it meant her father would live. And in that belief she found strength, unaware of the storm that was quietly waiting for her. A few days after sending the money, Zainab finally heard her mother's voice again. This time the tone was lighter, calmer. "Zainab, your father is getting treatment now," her mother said warmly. "The doctors are taking good care of him. You did well, my daughter. You've saved him." Those words wrapped around Zainab like a blanket. She closed her eyes, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. For nights she had been tossing and turning, imagining her father in pain, fearing she had acted too late. Now, hearing that he was safe, she felt the heavy weight on her chest finally ease. Her mother went on, thanking her over and over. "Your father is proud of you," she said. "We are both proud. You are our blessing." Zainab's heart swelled at those words. She had always tried to be a good daughter, but in that moment, she felt she had truly done something that mattered. At work, her colleagues noticed her brighter mood. Though she was still tired and hungry from all her sacrifices, she carried herself with quiet pride. She told herself the missed meals, the borrowed money, the empty bank account, it was all worth it. If her father was alive and recovering, then nothing else mattered. She imagined him sitting up in bed, his voice growing stronger, smiling as her mother fussed over him. She pictured him telling their neighbors how his daughter had saved his life, how she had worked hard in the city and never forgot her parents. That image gave her strength and made every hardship feel smaller. Even when she returned to her small, dimly lit apartment, Zainab found comfort in the thought that her sacrifice had meaning. The cracked walls and empty fridge didn't sting as much because in her heart, she believed she had done what any loving daughter should do. Her phone buzzed again later that evening. This time it was her father's voice, weak but full of emotion. "Zainab," he said softly, "thank you, my daughter. You've given me another chance." Those few words brought tears to her eyes. She covered her mouth and let herself cry, but they were tears of relief, not sorrow. That night she finally slept deeply, a smile resting on her face. For the first time in weeks she felt peace. Her sacrifice had not been in vain. She believed with all her heart that she had saved her father's life, and that belief carried her like a light in the darkness. Little did she know this peace was only temporary. The storm was still ahead. But in that moment, Zainab rested in the warmth of her parents' gratitude, proud to be the daughter who had done everything for love. A week later, Zainab was scrolling through her phone during a short break at work. She was tired, sipping on plain tea, when a photo suddenly stopped her cold. It was on her cousin's page. Bright colors, smiling faces, and music equipment set up in the yard of her parents' home. First she thought she was mistaken. She zoomed in, her hands trembling. But no, it was clearly her house in Kumasi, the same one where she had pictured her father lying sick in bed. The next picture left her speechless. Her father was standing tall, dressed in fine clothes, holding a drink in his hand, surrounded by laughing relatives. Her mother was beside him, smiling proudly as trays of food were passed around. Long tables were covered with plates of jollof rice, grilled meat, drinks, and even a cake. It wasn't just a small gathering, it was a grand party. Zainab's stomach tightened as she scrolled through more photos. Her cousins had tagged themselves, posing with plates piled high with food. Neighbors were dancing, children were running around in new clothes, and someone had even hired a DJ. She could almost hear the music blasting through the speakers. And the captions cut her even deeper. What a celebration! Best party of the year! Her hands grew cold, and she set the phone down, staring at it as if it might explain itself. For days she had been skipping meals, surviving on bread and tea, borrowing money from colleagues just to make ends meet. All because she believed her father was fighting for his life. And here he was, dancing at a party she unknowingly funded. Questions rushed through her mind. Was he ever sick at all? Did they really use her money for treatment, or was it always meant for the show of wealth? The thought made her chest ache. She remembered the shaky voice of her mother on the phone, the words gravely ill. The urgency, the fear. Had it all been an act? Zainab tried to convince herself there might be another explanation. Maybe the party was for her father's recovery. A Thanksgiving celebration. But the joy on their faces, the laughter in the captions, and the sheer extravagance of it all didn't match the story of struggle and sickness she had been told. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was the betrayal. She had given everything she had, believing she was saving her father's life. She had endured hunger, exhaustion, and debt for their sake. And now, sitting alone in her small apartment, she realized her sacrifice had been turned into a spectacle for others to enjoy. The photos blurred as her eyes filled with tears. For the first time, Zainab wasn't just tired, she was heartbroken. She had thought her love and sacrifice were unshakable. But what she saw on that screen made her question everything she believed about her parents. The celebration that brought others joy left her with nothing but pain. Zainab couldn't hold it in any longer. The photos kept replaying in her mind like a bad dream, and her chest felt too heavy to breathe. That night, she picked up her phone and called her parents. Her hands shook as she waited for the line to connect. When her mother finally answered, Zainab's voice cracked. "Mama, what is going on? I saw the pictures. A party, people eating, drinking, dancing while I thought Papa was sick. Please tell me the truth." For a moment there was silence. Then her mother let out a small laugh, the kind that made Zainab's stomach twist. "Ah, Zainab, don't worry yourself. It was just a small celebration. Nothing big. People are exaggerating." Zainab's heart sank. She wanted to believe her, but the images were still fresh in her mind. Tables full of food, a DJ, her father smiling wide. Nothing about it looked small. She pressed on, her voice trembling. "But Mama, I sent $4,000 because you said Papa was gravely ill. You said he needed urgent treatment. I skipped my meals, I borrowed money, Her words broke into a sob. "And you used it for a party?" Her mother sighed, as if Zainab were being dramatic. "Your father is fine now. Shouldn't we thank God with a celebration? People came to show support. Don't think too much, my daughter." Before Zainab could respond, her father's voice came on the line. He chuckled softly, not with gratitude but with amusement. "You're upset over nothing. We only showed our neighbors that our daughter takes care of us. That is a blessing to celebrate, isn't it?" The words stabbed deeper than any silence could have. In that instant, Zainab realized the truth. The story of sickness had been a lie. Her sacrifice had not gone into hospital bills or medicine. It had been poured into food, music, drinks, and decorations, all to display wealth and pride before the community. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "So it wasn't about saving Papa's life? You lied to me." Her parents didn't answer directly. Instead, they spoke over her, brushing off her questions, treating her pain like an annoyance. The laughter in their voices cut sharper than any insult. Zainab held the phone to her ear, but inside she felt herself crumbling. She had believed her love was protecting them, but they had twisted it into something cheap and shallow. After the call ended, she sat frozen, staring at the blank wall of her apartment. Her chest ached as though her heart had been stepped on. The people she trusted most had turned her sacrifice into entertainment. And the worst part? They didn't even see why she was hurting. That night, Zainab cried until her pillow was soaked. For the first time in her life, her parents' voices no longer brought her comfort. Instead, they echoed in her mind, sharp with betrayal. The love she had worn like armor now felt like chains pulling her down. Zainab couldn't sit still after that call. The laughter in her parents' voices replayed in her head, each echo burning deeper. She felt trapped in her tiny apartment in Kumasi, unable to breathe. Finally, she made a decision. She would go home. Not with notice, not with pleasantries. She needed to look them in the eyes and hear the truth without the safety of a phone line. 2 days later, she boarded a bus and made the long journey. The road stretched endlessly, but her thoughts were louder than the engine. She remembered the sleepless nights, the empty stomach, the loan she still had to repay, all for her father's treatment. Now all she saw in her mind was that party. Plates piled high, laughter spilling into the night. Her heart pounded harder with every mile closer to home. When she finally arrived, she didn't bother to knock. She pushed the gate open and stepped into the yard. To her shock, a few relatives were still gathered there, chatting and laughing as if the celebration had only just ended. The sound of their voices hit her like a wave. They greeted her with smiles, some clapping her on the back. "Ah, Zainab, our generous daughter is here," one uncle said, grinning. The word stung. Inside, she found her parents seated, looking relaxed and cheerful. Her voice cracked as she spoke, her hands trembling. "Mama, Papa, how could you do this to me?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Her chest heaved as she went on, her voice shaky but sharp. "I sent you $4,000 because you said Papa was dying. I starved myself, I borrowed money, I broke myself to save him. And what did you do? You threw a party? You lied to me." Her mother shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the relatives, but her father tried to laugh it off. "Zainab, lower your voice. People are here. Don't embarrass us." "Embarrass you?" she cried, her eyes filling with tears. "What about me? Do you know the pain I went through thinking you were dying? Do you know what it cost me to send that money? And you used it to feed neighbors and dance under lights while I went to bed hungry." The relatives murmured among themselves, some whispering in shock, others shaking their heads. Zainab stood her ground, her whole body trembling. "Why? Tell me why you betrayed me." Her parents sat in silence for a moment, their faces stiff, unwilling to admit guilt. The weight of the room pressed on Zainab's shoulders, but she refused to back down. Her tears flowed freely, her heart breaking openly in front of the very family she had worked so hard to honor. For the first time in her life, Zainab wasn't just the dutiful daughter. She was the betrayed daughter, standing raw and wounded in the very home she had sacrificed everything to protect. The silence in the room after Zainab's outburst was heavy, but it didn't last long. Her father leaned back in his chair, his face hard. "Ungrateful," he said sharply. "That is what you are. After everything we've done for you, you come here shouting like this? You dare question how we spend money in our own house." Zainab's breath caught. Ungrateful? The word cut deeper than the lie itself. She had given them everything she could, even the food from her own mouth, and now they were calling her ungrateful. Her mother joined in, her voice cold. "You talk as if the money was yours alone. Once it came to us, it became ours. And we chose how to use it. Who are you to challenge that?" Her eyes widened with disbelief. "Who am I? I'm your daughter. The daughter who nearly collapsed from hunger so you could live. The daughter who still owes her colleagues money because of this. And you celebrate while I suffer." The room erupted. Relatives whispered loudly, some nodding at Zainab's pain, others shaking their heads at her defiance. One aunt stepped forward, putting a hand on Zainab's arm. "My dear, you are right to feel hurt," she said softly. "They should not have lied." But almost immediately another relative snapped. "No, she is wrong to raise her voice at her parents. No matter what, you do not shame them in their own house." Zainab looked around, her vision blurred with tears. The community she had worked so hard to make proud was now split in front of her eyes. Some looked at her with pity, others with anger. The walls of the home she had once loved felt like they were closing in on her. Her father's voice rose above the chatter. "We raised you, fed you, sent you to school. And this is how you repay us? By accusing us in front of everyone? You forget your place." Zainab's lips trembled, her whole body shaking. I never forgot my place, she whispered. I lived my whole life in that place, sacrificing, working, giving. But you forgot the truth. You forgot love. Her mother waved her hand dismissively, as if brushing off a fly. You are making drama over nothing. You should be proud we showed the world how well our daughter takes care of us. Zainab's chest burned. Pride. That was all her sacrifice had become. A tool for show. No apology, no remorse, no recognition of her pain. Just pride and accusation. She turned to leave, her legs weak but her heart heavy with new strength. As she stepped outside, the whispers followed her. Some voices were gentle, telling her to stay strong. Others were sharp, accusing her of dishonor. Zainab knew one thing for certain. She had lost the parents she thought she knew. What hurt most wasn't the money, but the rejection of her love. And that wound was far deeper than any debt she carried. Zainab returned to Kumasi with a heart heavier than her tired body could carry. For days she replayed her parents' words in her mind. Ungrateful. Our money to use. Each memory felt like a fresh wound. She had always believed her sacrifices were building a bridge of love, but now she saw they had only built a stage for others to applaud. The pain was sharp, but beneath it grew something stronger: resolve. One evening, sitting alone in her dim apartment, Zainab opened her notebook where she used to track her finances. For years, almost every page was filled with transfers sent home, amounts scribbled with care, notes like Papa's medicine or house repairs. This time she looked at the blank page before her and whispered, "No more." It wasn't anger that guided her decision. It was survival. If her giving could be twisted into betrayal, then she had to learn to give differently. She took what little savings she had left and added to it with determination. Slowly, she began planning a small private clinic in Accra. It wasn't grand at first, just a modest space with 2 rooms, a few beds and borrowed equipment, but it carried her heart. She wanted to pour her love and energy into people who truly needed it, people who valued help. At work, when colleagues heard of her idea, some offered to donate old supplies, others volunteered their time. The support touched Zainab in ways her parents' rejection never could. It reminded her that kindness still had meaning when it was placed in the right hands. Opening day came quietly. No music, no flashing lights, no grand speeches. Just a handful of patients who walked in with real pain and real need. Zainab greeted them with a gentle smile, her white coat a shield of dignity she had rebuilt for herself. She worked tirelessly, treating coughs, tending wounds, listening to stories that reminded her why she had chosen nursing in the first place. Each thank you she received felt like balm on her broken heart. Weeks turned into months, and word spread about the young nurse running a clinic with honesty and care. More patients came, some bringing small tokens of appreciation. Fruits, bread, even handwritten notes. For Zainab, these gestures meant more than gold. They were proof that her giving was no longer wasted. Recognition followed. Local leaders praised her dedication. Neighbors in Accra spoke of her as the nurse who helps without judgment. For the first time, Zainab felt seen not just as a dutiful daughter, but as a woman who had built something meaningful on her own terms. Though the ache of her parents' betrayal still lingered, healing had begun. Zainab had turned her pain into purpose, her sacrifice into service. And in serving those who valued her, she slowly stitched her heart back together, one patient, one life, one act of kindness at a time. Months passed and Zainab's clinic in Accra grew stronger. She had found peace in her work, pouring her love into strangers who left with gratitude instead of betrayal. Life was still not easy, but it was honest, and that was enough for her. Then one evening her phone rang. It was her mother. The voice that once carried laughter now sounded weak and desperate. "Zainab, we are struggling. Your father is not well again. We have no money. Please, my daughter, help us." For a moment Zainab sat in silence. Her heart ached, not because she didn't care, but because the wound of their lies was still fresh. She remembered the party, the laughter, the word ungrateful thrown at her like an insult. Yet she also remembered who she was. She was not cruel. She was not careless. She took a deep breath and spoke softly but firmly. "Mama, I will help, but not with money in your hands. Papa is sick, bring him to my clinic. I will treat him myself, and whatever he needs I will provide, under my conditions." There was silence on the other end, a mix of shock and hesitation. Zainab's eyes filled with tears, But her voice did not waver. She had learned her lesson. Her love was still strong, but it would no longer be misused. In her heart she whispered the truth she had come to accept. I was their daughter when they needed me, but they forgot me when I needed truth. Now I live a life where my giving cannot be betrayed.